The massive warship floated in the darkness of space like a metal city among the stars. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the large viewing window. His purple skin gleamed under the blue lights of the command center. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years, and Kextar had personally conquered 47 worlds during his long career. The communication officer turned toward him with confusion written across her face. She held a glowing tablet in her clawed hands and shook her head slowly. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Void Watchers." Kextar felt his blood grow cold. The Void Watchers were ancient beings who lived in the empty spaces between star systems. They rarely spoke to anyone, and when they did, it usually meant something terrible was about to happen. In his 200 years of military service, Kextar had only heard of them making contact 3 times before. "Put it through," he commanded, his voice steady despite his growing worry. The main screen flickered to life, showing nothing but swirling darkness. Then a voice spoke. Neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrian Empire, we bring you a warning." The bridge fell silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing to listen. Even the soft humming of the ship's engines seemed to quiet down. "We are listening," Kextar replied formally. "Do not approach the third planet of System Sol 3. The beings you call humans are not what they appear to be. Earth is a trap. Do not go there. Do not send your fleets there. Forget that world exists." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Kextar stared at the dark screen for several long moments. Earth was supposed to be their next conquest. A primitive world with beings who had barely learned to travel between their own planets. The intelligence report showed a species that used crude chemical rockets and had only recently developed basic nuclear technology. Many light years away on the blue planet called Earth, Dr. Lisa Bennett sat alone in her laboratory at the International Space Research Facility in Colorado. The building was quiet except for the steady beeping of her monitoring equipment. She had been working for 16 hours straight, analyzing deep space radio signals as part of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence project. Lisa pushed her brown hair away from her tired eyes and reached for another cup of coffee. The liquid had gone cold hours ago, but she drank it anyway. Her computer screen showed wave patterns and frequency readings that most people would find boring. But to Lisa, they were like music. Each signal told a story about distant stars and planets. The laboratory door opened with a soft whoosh, and Dr. Ryan Clark walked in carrying 2 steaming cups of fresh coffee. He was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. Ryan had been Lisa's research partner for 8 years, and he knew her habits well enough to know she would still be working long after everyone else had gone home. "You missed dinner again," Ryan said, setting one of the cups next to her keyboard. "And lunch. And probably breakfast, too." Lisa smiled gratefully and wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "Thanks, I think I might have found something interesting today. Look at this." She pointed to a series of spikes on her computer screen. "These energy signatures started appearing about 6 hours ago. They're coming from outside our solar system, but they're getting stronger." Ryan leaned over her shoulder to study the data. His expression grew serious as he recognized the patterns. "Lisa, these readings suggest something massive is moving toward our solar system. Something that's producing energy levels far beyond anything we've ever detected before." Neither of them knew that at that exact moment, halfway across the galaxy, Admiral Kextar was meeting with the Zephyrian High Command to discuss the strange warning they had received. The war room of the Zephyrian flagship was filled with the Empire's most powerful leaders. General Vexmore, a scarred veteran of countless battles, slammed his fist on the metal table. "The Void Watchers are trying to keep us from claiming a valuable world. Earth has abundant resources and a population that would make excellent slaves for our mining operations." Commander Thelian, the youngest member of the High Command, spoke carefully. "General, the Void Watchers have never given false warnings before. When they told us to avoid the Korvath Nebula, we later discovered it was filled with creatures that could destroy entire fleets. When they warned us about the crystal beings of Arcturus, we learned they could turn our own weapons against us." "Those were different situations," Vexmore growled. "We're talking about humans. Our intelligence shows they can barely travel to their own moon. They fight wars with primitive weapons that use chemical explosions. They haven't even learned to harness the power of their own star. Admiral Kekstar listened to the debate in silence. The intelligence reports were clear. Humans were a young species that had only recently developed basic space travel. Their largest weapons could destroy cities, but nothing more. Their fastest ships moved slower than the cargo vessels of most civilized species. But the warning from the Void Watchers troubled him deeply. In all of galactic history, they had never been wrong about a threat. "The decision is made," announced Supreme Commander Zalthek, the highest-ranking military officer in the Empire. "We will proceed with the conquest of Earth as planned. If the humans pose any real threat, our fleet of 500 warships will easily handle them. The Void Watchers are simply trying to protect valuable territory for themselves." Back on Earth, Colonel Jake Morrison was having trouble sleeping. The military officer lay in his bed at NORAD, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what he had seen that day. During his evening patrol of the mountain facility, he had noticed something strange. The local wildlife was acting oddly. Bears that should have been preparing for winter hibernation were gathering in large groups. Birds were flying in formations that made no sense for their species. Even the insects seemed to be moving with purpose, creating patterns on the ground that looked almost like symbols. Jake had served in the military for 25 years and had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. Animals didn't organize themselves. They followed instinct and basic survival needs. Yet today he had watched as deer, elk, and even mountain lions had moved through the forest in what could only be described as coordinated groups. His phone buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Bennett at the research facility. Her equipment had detected massive energy buildups in Earth's magnetosphere. The readings showed power levels that shouldn't be possible without technology far more advanced than anything humans had ever built. Jake got out of bed and walked to his window. The night sky looked normal, filled with stars and a thin crescent moon. But something felt different. The air itself seemed to vibrate with invisible energy. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Earth was waking up from a very long sleep. In space, ancient monitoring stations that had been hidden throughout the solar system for millions of years began to power up. They had been waiting patiently, buried in asteroids and disguised as space debris. Now, as the Zephyrian fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, these stations detected the approaching threat and began sending signals to the blue planet. The Zephyrian fleet of 500 warships activated their hyperspace drives simultaneously. Space folded around them as they entered the tunnel of light that would carry them across vast distances in mere hours. Admiral Kekstar stood on his bridge, confident that this would be just another easy conquest for the mighty Zephyrian Empire. He had no idea that he was leading his fleet directly into the most dangerous trap in galactic history. The Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, like a swarm of metal insects. Admiral Kekstar studied the tactical displays on his bridge with growing confusion. His sensors showed exactly what the intelligence reports had predicted: a small blue planet with primitive technology, no orbital defenses, and no military fleet waiting to meet them. "Scan the entire system," Kekstar ordered his science officer. "I want to know about every ship, every satellite, every piece of metal floating in this space." The science officer worked quickly at her station, her clawed fingers dancing across the glowing controls. After several minutes, she looked up with surprise. "Admiral, we detect only basic communication satellites around the planet. Their most advanced vessels appear to be small research stations orbiting their moon. No weapons platforms, no defense grids, nothing that could threaten even our smallest scout ships." On Earth, Dr. Lisa Bennett's equipment suddenly came alive with activity. Every screen in her laboratory began flashing red warning signals as massive energy signatures appeared on her sensors. She had never seen readings this powerful before. Whatever had just arrived in their solar system was producing energy levels that made the sun look like a candle. "Ryan, get over here right now," Lisa called to her partner, her voice shaking with excitement and fear. "We have contact." Dr. Ryan Clark rushed to her workstation and stared at the impossible readings. "My God, Lisa, how many ships are we looking at?" "The computer estimates 500 vessels, each one larger than anything we've ever built. They're positioned at the outer edge of our solar system, just past Pluto's orbit." Lisa's hands trembled as she reached for the emergency communication device that would alert governments worldwide. Within hours, emergency meetings were taking place in every major capital on Earth. In Washington, President Helen Martinez sat at the head of a long table surrounded by her top advisors. The Situation Room was filled with tension as military leaders and scientists tried to process the reality of first contact with an alien civilization. General Paul Rodriguez, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, spoke first. Madam President, our satellites confirm the presence of a massive alien fleet. They haven't moved from their position, but they're clearly scanning our planet. We need to assume hostile intent and prepare for the worst. Director of Intelligence Kate Sullivan disagreed. General, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. The energy readings suggest weapons that could turn our entire planet to dust. The fact that they're waiting indicates they might want to communicate. President Martinez listened carefully to both arguments. She had been in office for 3 years and had dealt with many crises, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. What are our options for making contact? Dr. Alex Turner, the nation's leading expert on interstellar communication, stepped forward. We can send a peaceful transmission using our deep space radio arrays. If they're technologically advanced enough for interstellar travel, they should be able to understand basic mathematical concepts and peaceful intentions. The decision was made to attempt peaceful contact while secretly preparing Earth's military forces for possible invasion. Dr. Turner would lead the communication effort, assisted by Captain Steve Williams of the newly formed Space Defense Corps. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kexter received the human transmission. The message was simple: mathematical sequences followed by images showing human beings with their hands raised in what appeared to be a peaceful gesture. The transmission repeated the same pattern over and over. They're trying to communicate, his communication officer reported. The signal suggests they understand we're here and want to talk. Kextar felt slightly disappointed. In his experience, the best conquests were the ones where the enemy put up at least some resistance. These humans seemed ready to surrender before the battle had even begun. Send a response. Tell them we want to meet with their leaders. The meeting was arranged to take place in neutral space near Earth's moon. Dr. Turner and Captain Williams boarded a small shuttle, humanity's most advanced spacecraft, which looked like a toy compared to the massive alien vessels surrounding it. As they approached the Zephyrian ship, both men tried to hide their amazement at the alien technology. The Zephyrian shuttle bay was enormous, large enough to hold dozens of human spacecraft. Admiral Kextar waited for them with a small group of his officers. The aliens were tall and thin with purple skin, large black eyes, and hands that ended in sharp claws. They wore flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. I am Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrian Empire, the alien leader announced through a translation device. His voice was deep and commanding. We have come to claim this system for our empire. Your planet will provide valuable resources, and your people will serve as workers in our mining operations throughout the galaxy. Dr. Turner tried to remain calm despite the shock of hearing Earth's death sentence delivered so casually. Admiral, we are peaceful people. Surely we can reach some kind of agreement that benefits both our civilizations. Admiral Kextar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Agreement? You misunderstand the situation. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. Your people will surrender within 1 standard day, or we will take your world by force. Captain Williams stepped forward, his military training taking over. And if we refuse? Then your species will be extinct by tomorrow, Kextar replied without emotion. We have conquered over 800 worlds. Yours will simply be number 801. While the tense meeting continued on the alien ship, strange things began happening throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Navigation officers reported instrument malfunctions that made no sense. Ships that had functioned perfectly for decades suddenly couldn't determine their exact position in space. Commander Thelian was reviewing sensor data when she noticed something impossible. Admiral, our deep space scanners are detecting massive energy readings coming from the planet's surface, but our detailed scans show no technology capable of producing such power. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Bennett was discovering something that would change everything. Her monitoring equipment had detected fluctuations in the planet's magnetic field that defied all known laws of physics. The magnetic field was shifting and changing in patterns that suggested intelligent control. Ryan, look at this data, she called to her partner. According to these readings, something enormous is buried deep inside Earth's core. Something artificial. Dr. Clark studied the information with growing amazement. Lisa, these energy signatures don't match any known technology. The power levels suggest machinery that's millions of years more advanced than anything we've ever imagined. Back in space, the first Zephyrian scout ship prepared to enter Earth's atmosphere for a closer scan of the planet's defenses. The pilot was confident in his mission. After all, what could a primitive species possibly do to threaten the most advanced military technology in the galaxy? The scout ship crossed into Earth's upper atmosphere and immediately began experiencing system failures. Every instrument on board started showing impossible readings. The pilot tried to turn back, but his controls no longer responded to his commands. He managed to send one final transmission to the fleet before his ship simply vanished. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature. The ship and its pilot were there one moment and gone the next, as if they had never existed at all. Admiral Kextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. In over 200 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Ships didn't just disappear. There was always wreckage, always some trace of what had happened. "Send another scout ship," he ordered, his voice less confident than before. The second ship met the same fate as the first. It approached Earth's atmosphere, sent a brief transmission about system malfunctions, and then vanished without a trace. Dr. Turner and Captain Williams watched the alien crew's growing confusion with fascination. Whatever was happening to their ships, the Zephyrians clearly had no explanation for it. The mighty galactic empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds was suddenly facing something completely beyond their understanding. Admiral Kextar ended the meeting abruptly, ordering the human representatives to return to their planet while he dealt with the crisis facing his fleet. As their shuttle departed, both humans wondered what force could make such advanced aliens look so frightened. On Earth, strange reports were coming in from around the world. People were experiencing vivid dreams about stars and planets they had never seen. Children were drawing pictures of alien symbols they couldn't possibly know. Scientists were discovering ancient structures buried deep underground that predated human civilization by millions of years. Dr. Bennett worked through the night, trying to understand the data her equipment was collecting. The energy readings from Earth's core were growing stronger by the hour, as if something enormous was slowly awakening from a very long sleep. Admiral Kextar paced across his bridge like a caged animal. 3 more scout ships had vanished without explanation, and his fleet's instruments were reporting increasingly impossible readings. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds were now drifting helplessly as their navigation systems failed one by one. "Admiral, our hyperspace drives are no longer functioning," reported his chief engineer, her voice filled with panic. "We cannot leave this system. Something is preventing us from opening hyperspace tunnels." The Admiral stopped pacing and stared at the main display showing Earth. The small blue planet looked peaceful and harmless, but it was somehow trapping the most powerful fleet in galactic history. How is this possible? Our technology has dominated the galaxy for thousands of years. On Earth, people around the world were experiencing something no human had ever felt before. Dr. Lisa Bennett woke up in her laboratory chair with memories that weren't her own flooding through her mind. She remembered star charts of distant galaxies, mathematical equations that her conscious mind couldn't understand. And most disturbing of all, she remembered being someone else entirely. The dreams had started the moment the alien fleet arrived, but now they were becoming more vivid during her waking hours. Lisa saw herself standing on the bridge of a massive starship, commanding technologies that made the Zephyrian vessels look primitive. But these weren't fantasies or imagination. The memories felt completely real, as if they belonged to her but from a different lifetime. Dr. Ryan Clark found her sitting motionless at her desk, staring at equations she had written on a whiteboard. The mathematical formulas were far beyond anything taught in human universities, yet Lisa had written them perfectly from memory. "Lisa, where did these equations come from?" Ryan asked, studying the complex symbols with amazement. "I don't know," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I woke up and they were in my head. I understand them completely, but I've never seen them before in my life." "Ryan, these formulas describe how to build weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Similar experiences were happening to people across the planet. A farmer in Kansas suddenly knew how to repair fusion reactors with his bare hands. A teacher in Japan found herself solving engineering problems that had puzzled scientists for decades. Children were speaking in languages that had never been heard on Earth, yet somehow other children understood them perfectly. Colonel Jake Morrison led a team of scientists and soldiers into Yellowstone National Park, following seismic readings that showed massive structures moving deep underground. The geological equipment had detected artificial constructions buried miles beneath the Earth's surface, constructions that were clearly not made by human hands. What they found in a hidden cave system defied every law of physics and archaeology they knew. Tunnels carved from solid rock led down into the Earth for impossible distances. The walls were covered with symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. Most incredible of all, the tunnels showed no signs of age despite carbon dating that suggested they were millions of years old. Colonel, these structures predate human civilization by eons, reported Dr. Amy Foster, the team's chief archaeologist. But the technology used to create them is more advanced than anything we have today. It's as if someone built a massive facility inside the Earth itself and then abandoned it. In space, the Zephyrian fleet was learning that their weapons were as useless as their navigation systems. Admiral Kextar had ordered his ships to fire on Earth from a safe distance, hoping to force the humans to surrender. But every energy beam and missile fired at the planet simply vanished before reaching its target, as if space itself was swallowing their attacks. Commander Thelian studied the sensor readings with growing terror. Admiral, our ships are being moved against our will. We're being drawn closer to Earth by forces our science cannot explain or resist. What do you mean moved? Kextar demanded. I mean, our engines are at full reverse power, but we're still drifting toward the planet. Whatever is controlling this system is stronger than our most powerful drives. Dr. Alex Turner remained aboard the Zephyrian flagship as Earth's diplomatic representative, but he was witnessing the complete breakdown of alien confidence. These beings who had arrived expecting easy conquest were now trapped and helpless, watching their advanced technology fail in ways that seemed impossible. The aliens' panic increased when their medical scanners detected changes in Dr. Turner's brain activity. Regions of his mind that had been dormant were suddenly becoming active, and his thoughts were operating at frequencies the Zephyrians had never encountered before. Human Turner, Admiral Kextar said, his voice now filled with uncertainty rather than arrogance. What is happening to your planet? What is happening to you? Dr. Turner looked at the alien leader with eyes that seemed older and wiser than they had been just hours before. I honestly don't know, Admiral, but I'm beginning to remember things that I've never learned. Things about space travel, about weapons, about civilizations that existed long before humans developed agriculture. Back on Earth, Dr. Bennett was making a discovery that would change everything. Deep in classified government files that she somehow now had the security clearance to access, she found references to archaeological discoveries that had been immediately sealed by international treaty. Ancient structures found around the world, all sharing the same impossible architecture she was seeing in her visions. The files described excavations in Antarctica that had uncovered technology buried under miles of ice. Similar discoveries in the Sahara Desert, the Amazon rainforest, and the deepest ocean trenches. Every continent on Earth contained evidence of an advanced civilization that had existed millions of years before humans appeared. But the most shocking discovery was the carbon dating results. The structures weren't built by an alien civilization that had visited Earth. They were built by humans. Humans who had possessed technology beyond anything the current species could imagine. Ryan, look at this, Lisa called to her partner, her voice filled with awe and terror. According to these files, the structures we've been finding aren't alien at all. They're human, but they're millions of years old. How is that possible? Colonel Morrison's team was discovering the same truth deep underground in Yellowstone. The symbols on the tunnel walls weren't alien writing. They were an ancient form of human language, one that somehow every member of his team could now read perfectly, despite never having seen it before. The symbols told a story that shattered everything humans thought they knew about their own history. Earth wasn't humanity's birth world. It was a prison. Humans hadn't evolved on this planet. They had been brought here, locked away, and forced to forget who they really were. The massive energy pulse that erupted from Earth's core could be felt throughout the solar system. Every human on the planet suddenly understood the truth in a moment of perfect clarity. The memories that had been buried in their DNA for millions of years came flooding back all at once. Humanity wasn't a young species learning to explore space. They were the descendants of the galaxy's most feared civilization, deliberately imprisoned on Earth by a coalition of alien species who had been terrified of human expansion across the stars. Dr. Bennett stood in her laboratory, no longer confused or frightened by the memories flooding her mind. She remembered the great human empire that had nearly conquered the entire galaxy through superior technology and tactical genius. She remembered the desperate alliance of alien species that had finally managed to capture and contain humanity on this artificial prison world. Most importantly, she remembered that the prison was never meant to hold humans forever. It was designed to change them, to make them less aggressive and dangerous through millions of years of controlled evolution. But the plan had failed completely. Humanity had only become more adaptable, more cunning, and more dangerous during their long imprisonment. The containment systems were failing, and the guards were waking up. Admiral Kextar and his fleet had arrived expecting to conquer a primitive world. But instead they had triggered the release of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Earth wasn't a trap for aliens who came to conquer it. Earth was a trap designed to contain humanity, and that trap was finally breaking open. In space, ancient defense networks that had been hidden throughout the solar system for millions of years suddenly activated. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids and space debris revealed themselves, surrounding the Zephyrian fleet with technology that made their most advanced warships look like toys. The trap wasn't for the aliens after all. The trap had been holding humanity prisoner, and now it was opening to release them back into the galaxy they had once nearly ruled. The awakening hit humanity like lightning striking the entire planet at once. Dr. Lisa Bennett felt her mind expand beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. Memories that had been locked away in human DNA for millions of years flooded through her consciousness like a river breaking through a dam. She remembered commanding fleets of starships that could cross galaxies in minutes. She remembered technologies that could reshape entire solar systems. Most importantly, she remembered why humanity had been imprisoned on Earth. Humans weren't native to this small blue planet. They were the descendants of the most successful and feared civilization the galaxy had ever known. Their ancestors had swept across the stars like an unstoppable force, not through violence or conquest, but through sheer technological and intellectual superiority. Other species had tried to compete and failed. Humanity had been on the verge of dominating the entire galaxy when the Great Alliance was formed. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy had joined together in desperation. They knew they couldn't defeat humanity in open warfare, so they had used deception instead. They convinced human leaders to attend a peace conference on what they claimed was a neutral world. That world was Earth, and it was the most sophisticated prison ever constructed. Dr. Bennett now understood why Earth seemed so perfect for human life. It had been designed specifically for them. The planet itself was artificial, created to be humanity's cage while they underwent forced evolution designed to make them less dangerous. The plan was to keep humans trapped for millions of years until their aggressive instincts and technological genius had been bred out of them completely. But the plan had failed spectacularly. Instead of becoming weaker, humanity had become more adaptable, more resourceful, and more cunning. The prison had taught them patience and strategy in ways their ancestors had never learned. All around the world, humans were experiencing the same awakening. Colonel Jake Morrison stood in the underground tunnels beneath Yellowstone, no longer confused by the ancient symbols on the walls. He could read them as easily as English now, and they told the story of Earth's true purpose. The tunnels were part of a massive control system that had kept humanity's true nature suppressed for eons. The colonel's military training merged with inherited memories of commanding starfleets that numbered in the millions. He understood battle tactics that could coordinate attacks across multiple galaxies simultaneously. His soldiers were experiencing similar awakenings, remembering technologies and strategies that made their current weapons look like stone tools. Captain Steve Williams, still aboard the trapped Zephyrian ship, watched the aliens' growing terror as they realized what they had stumbled into. The ship's medical scanners were detecting impossible changes in human brain activity throughout Earth's population. Regions of the human mind that had been dormant for millions of years were suddenly operating at full capacity. Dr. Williams looked at Admiral Kextar with eyes that now held the wisdom of ages. "Admiral, you should know that your species was part of the original alliance that imprisoned us here. Your ancestors helped design this prison. Kextar's purple skin grew pale as ancient records hidden in Zephyrian archives suddenly made sense. The legendary war against the Voidbringers, as his people had called them, hadn't been won through superior military might. It had been won through the greatest deception in galactic history. The Void Watchers had tried to warn him because they remembered the truth. They had been there when humanity was imprisoned. They knew what would happen if the containment systems ever failed. On Earth, children who had never studied advanced mathematics were solving equations that could describe the fundamental forces of the universe. Farmers were building fusion reactors in their barns using scrap metal and intuitive knowledge they couldn't explain. Teachers were developing educational programs based on learning methods that could train a student to master any subject in weeks rather than years. Dr. Ryan Clark watched his partner, Lisa, work at a computer terminal, but she was no longer using the keyboard. Instead, she was interfacing directly with the computer through touch, somehow communicating with the machine in ways that bypassed normal input methods entirely. The screens around her displayed information flowing faster than any human should be able to process, yet she understood every detail perfectly. "Lisa, how are you doing that?" Ryan asked, amazed by what he was witnessing. "I'm not sure," she replied, never taking her eyes off the flowing data. "But I remember my ancestors could communicate directly with any technology they created. Our machines weren't separate from us. They were extensions of our consciousness." The defensive systems hidden throughout Earth's solar system were coming online one by one. Ancient space stations disguised as asteroids revealed their true nature, as weapons platforms more advanced than anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever encountered. Monitoring devices that had watched over humanity's prison for millions of years were now switching to their secondary purpose: protecting humanity from outside threats. Admiral Kextar received a transmission directly into his mind, bypassing all his ship's communication systems entirely. Dr. Bennett's voice spoke to him with calm authority that carried the weight of eons. "Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrian Empire, your fleet is now completely under our control. Your weapons cannot function in this system. Your ships cannot leave. Your communications with your homeworlds have been severed. But we want you to understand that we harbor no anger toward you personally." The Admiral tried to respond, but found he could only listen as the human woman continued. "Your ancestors participated in our imprisonment because they were afraid of what humanity might become. They were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they thought. We were never interested in ruling over other species or destroying civilizations. We simply excelled at everything we attempted, and that excellence threatened the established order of the galaxy." Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, alien crew members watched in horror as their most advanced technology was effortlessly controlled by beings they had dismissed as primitive just hours before. Navigation systems that had guided ships across the galaxy for thousands of years were now completely useless. Weapons that could destroy planets were offline and couldn't be reactivated. President Helen Martinez stood in the White House Situation Room, but she no longer felt like the leader of a single nation on one world. Memories of governing star systems containing billions of inhabited planets filled her mind. She understood diplomatic protocols for communicating with hundreds of different alien species, economic systems that could manage resources across entire galactic sectors, and military strategies for defending civilization itself. "General Rodriguez," she said to her military advisor, "please contact all world leaders and inform them that humanity is resuming its place in galactic affairs. We have approximately 6 months of preparation before other alien civilizations detect what has happened here and respond." The general nodded, understanding completely despite the fact that such knowledge should have been impossible for him to possess. His own awakened memories included commanding defense forces that protected thousands of worlds simultaneously. Dr. Alex Turner, still aboard the Zephyrian flagship, watched Admiral Kextar struggle to comprehend his fleet's helplessness. The alien leader, who had arrived expecting easy conquest, was now trapped by technology so advanced that his scientists couldn't even understand how it worked. "What do you want from us?" Kextar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Turner looked at him with something approaching sympathy. "We want you to help us prevent the chaos that's about to engulf the galaxy. When word spreads that humanity is free, every civilization that participated in our imprisonment will panic. Some will try to form new alliances against us. Others will attempt preemptive strikes. Most will simply flee to the outer rim of the galaxy. The truth was becoming clear to both species. Humanity's awakening wasn't just the end of their imprisonment. It was the beginning of a complete transformation of galactic civilization. The species that had once nearly dominated the galaxy through peaceful expansion was now free, but they had been changed by millions of years of captivity. They were no longer interested in expansion for its own sake. Prison had taught them the value of freedom, and they intended to ensure that no species would ever be enslaved or oppressed again. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their intelligence. Their greatest strength was their unwillingness to accept that anyone should be denied the freedom to choose their own destiny. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrian fleet arrived at Earth, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Word of humanity's awakening had spread like wildfire across every inhabited system, carried by quantum communication networks that the former prisoners now controlled completely. The reaction was exactly what the Void Watchers had feared when they sent their warning. Panic consumed entire civilizations as species remembered the ancient stories their ancestors had tried to forget. The legends of the Voidbringers, the Starwalkers, the Silent Conquerors. All the different names various cultures had given to humanity during their brief but overwhelming expansion across the galaxy millions of years. Ego Dr. Lisa Bennett stood in what had once been her simple laboratory but was now the central command center for humanity's return to galactic civilization. The room had grown far beyond its original walls, expanded through technology that seemed to bend space itself. Holographic displays showed the locations of every inhabited world in the galaxy, tracking the movements of fleeing populations and the formation of desperate new alliances. She was no longer just a radio astronomer from Colorado. The awakening had restored her complete identity as Fleet Commander Elena Vasquez of the Third Human Expansion, one of the greatest military strategists in galactic history. But Lisa Bennett was still part of who she was, and that human perspective shaped every decision she made. Status report on the Liberation fleets she requested from her aide, who had once been Dr. Ryan Clark but now remembered his role as Admiral Marcus Chen of the Humanitarian Corps. 67 worlds have been freed from various empires in the past month alone, Ryan reported, studying data that flowed across multiple displays. The Krovar Mining Consortium collapsed completely when their slave populations realized they had protection. The Skellen Trade Federation is requesting negotiations rather than face direct confrontation. The liberation of enslaved worlds was proceeding faster than anyone had anticipated. Humanity's approach was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They didn't conquer planets or replace one empire with another. Instead, they arrived with overwhelming technological superiority and simply offered freedom to any being who wanted it. Their ships were marvels that defied everything other species understood about physics and engineering. The vessels seemed to be grown rather than built, alive in ways that alien scientists couldn't comprehend. They could travel distances that made hyperspace look primitive, arriving at distant worlds before traditional faster-than-light communication could even announce their departure. Admiral Kekstar stood on the observation deck of his own flagship, but he was no longer its commander. The Zephyrian Empire had ceased to exist 3 months ago, not through conquest but through choice. When faced with humanity's overwhelming technological advantage, most of his people had chosen cooperation over destruction. He now served as a liaison between the former empire and Earth's new galactic government, helping to coordinate the peaceful transition of power throughout former Zephyrian space. It was strange work for a career military officer, but he found it surprisingly fulfilling. The evacuation of the Mordak system is complete, reported Commander Thelian, who had chosen to work with the humans, rather than flee to the galactic rim like many of their former colleagues. The Mordak people have been relocated to 3 worlds of their choosing, all with climates suitable for their species. This was how humanity operated now. When they encountered a species that had been enslaved or oppressed, they didn't simply free them and leave. They provided everything needed for those beings to build new civilizations, according to their own values and desires. Entire worlds were terraformed in days using technology that seemed like magic to other species. Colonel Jake Morrison, now remembering his identity as General Harrison Stone of the Planetary Defense Corps, led the establishment of human colonies throughout the galaxy. But these weren't conquests in any traditional sense. Each new human settlement was designed to protect and assist nearby alien civilizations rather than dominate them. His current assignment was the Andromeda sector, where 17 different species had lived under the brutal rule of the hegemony for over 2,000 years. The hegemony's leaders had fled when the first human ships appeared, leaving behind billions of beings who had never known freedom. General, the Quillen people are requesting assistance with establishing their own government, reported Major Susan Lee, formerly Dr. Amy Foster from the Yellowstone expedition. They've lived under hegemony rule for so long that they've forgotten how to make decisions for themselves. Jake nodded with understanding. This was the most challenging part of liberation work. Many species had been enslaved for so many generations that freedom itself was terrifying. Humanity's role had become that of teachers and protectors, helping other beings rediscover their own potential. Captain Steve Williams commanded a ship that would have been impossible to imagine just months before. The vessel was a living entity that responded to his thoughts and emotions, capable of crossing galactic distances in moments and defending entire star systems single-handedly. His mission was patrol duty, ensuring that no new empires arose to replace the old ones. Captain, we're detecting refugee ships in the Vorthan system, reported his navigator, Lieutenant Tom Bradley. Appears to be survivors from the Eternal Dominion trying to establish a new power base. Set course for Vorthan, Williams ordered. Let's remind them that the Age of Empires is over. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity had become the galaxy's police force, but they enforced only one law. No being had the right to enslave or oppress another. Beyond that, every species was free to develop according to their own nature and desires. Dr. Alex Turner had become Earth's primary representative to the new Galactic Council, where every species had an equal voice regardless of their technological level or military power. The Council met on a space station that existed partially outside normal spacetime, accessible to any being but controlled by none. The Zentorian Republic is requesting membership, Turner announced to the assembled representatives. They've successfully transitioned from a slave-owning society to a democratic federation in just 4 months. The transformation of galactic civilization was proceeding at an incredible pace. Species that had spent centuries under imperial rule were rediscovering their own cultures and capabilities. Art, science, and philosophy flourished as beings were freed from the constant struggle for survival under oppressive regimes. President Helen Martinez, now governing not just Earth but serving as humanity's primary coordinator for galactic affairs, reviewed reports from across known space. Her responsibilities had expanded beyond anything any human leader had ever faced, but her awakened memories provided the experience needed for such a massive undertaking. Madam President, we're receiving signals from beyond the galactic rim, reported her communications director. Long-range sensors are detecting civilizations in other galaxies that appear to be under similar oppression to what we found here. Martinez smiled, knowing that humanity's work was far from finished. Their imprisonment on Earth had taught them patience and wisdom that their ancestors had lacked. They were no longer interested in expansion for its own sake, but they couldn't ignore suffering wherever they found it. Dr. Bennett stood at her command center, monitoring the quantum communication networks that now connected every free world in the galaxy. The transformation had been remarkable, but she knew it was only the beginning. Humanity had learned something during their millions of years in prison that their ancestors had never understood. True strength wasn't the ability to conquer or control others. True strength was the willingness to ensure that everyone else could choose their own path to happiness and fulfillment. As she prepared to send the first official diplomatic mission to the Andromeda Galaxy, Bennett reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this point. The trap that was supposed to contain humanity had instead created exactly what the galaxy needed. Protectors who understood the value of freedom because they had lost it for so long. A new message appeared on her display, detected by monitoring stations at the very edge of known space. It was a simple transmission from a distant galaxy, barely detectable but unmistakably artificial. The message repeated the same pattern over and over, a mathematical sequence followed by what appeared to be a plea for help. Bennett smiled as she authorized the construction of humanity's first intergalactic vessel. The galaxy was finally free, but the universe was vast, And there were always more beings who needed someone to remind their oppressors that no one had the right to steal another's freedom. The trap had been opened, and its former prisoners had become the galaxy's liberators. Now it was time to take that message to the stars beyond.